Anyway, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Hunter Ohanian, the director of the Stonewall National Museum and Archives, located here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And we are very happy to have all of you joining us this evening. This is a series of programs that we started in the beginning of COVID, and we've been doing them every week. I think this might be episode number 32, which is great. These talks last for 1 hour, 6:30 on East Coast time. They get recorded and posted on our website. So you can see them here. So if you have friends who are not able to see tonight's talk, you can tell them that they can see it later. And also, we are also simulcasting with Facebook. And I just saw that little light go on. So hello to all of our friends on Facebook. I just saw it on my phone here. And so that's good as well too. And so I want everyone to say hello to tonight's guest, Nyala Moon. Hello, Nyala.
Hi. Hi,
Nice,
everyone.
nice to see you.
Nice to be here with you guys speaking. This is such a huge honor.
Thank you, thank you. So Nyala, where are we finding you this evening? Where are you?
So I am in Harlem, New York City.
Yeah. What's it like in Harlem right now during the pandemic?
You know, it's really interesting because when a lot of my friends who are not from New York City, what they're very interested to see like how New York is. And I always have to tell them, like, you know, especially in the early stages, like a year ago, or actually not a year ago, last March, it was like, you know, if you go to like, let's say the touristy places, it was like deserted. But if you live in like, let's say a neighborhood kind of place, you know, like where where like less tourists are going to like frequent, it's pretty much the same, you know. I mean, people are like, you know, of course they're staying inside more and they're wearing masks, but it's not completely different from what you would see, you know, like if you were in your neighborhood. You know, life is still happening, of course, at a more reduced rate, but it's not a ghost town. Like if you go to 42nd Street, you know, if you go to like, you know, like the, I guess you would say trendier places, you know, it's like a ghost town. Like, you know, it's like businesses are closed. You would probably be like one of two people walking the street. But if you live in like a small neighborhood, you know,
Yeah.
it's like the same.
And that's kind of important. I think you're bringing up an important point there, that having lived in New York for a long time, I mean, Harlem is a wonderful residential neighborhood. It's a great family place. It's a place that's changing like many other places. And certainly there are a lot of queer people who have moved into there as well too. And so there is a bit of clash with the cultures from places. But ultimately, regardless, it is a neighborhood in which people really feel like it's their local neighborhood. So just as you say, the vegetable store or the butcher or anybody else, they're still open down the street.
They're still open. Like, there's a butcher's actually close to where I live. Mm-hmm. And like almost every evening, you know, if I'm walking out, it's still a line down the block to the butcher's. You know, people are getting their meat. I don't eat meat, but I definitely appreciate the need to get your meat, you know, for the week or for whatever, you know. I definitely appreciate it. So yeah, life is still happening, you know.
Great. Well, so for those of you, if this is your first time, Stonewall National Museum and Archives is located here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we've been around for almost 50 years. We have one of the largest LGBTQ libraries in the world, 28,000 volumes in our library. And by going to our website, stonewall-museum.org, you can search all the titles in our library. And if you're here in South Florida, of course, you can take a book out. And then in addition to our library, we have a very large archive. We have about 2,700 linear feet. And there was a period of time which I didn't know what that meant. So let me translate it for you. It is up all the way one side of the Empire State Building and all the way down the other. Or another way of thinking about it, it is 6 million pages of queer culture, mostly going back to the 1950s to the present day. And so if you are in South Florida, it's definitely a place to stop by and see what's happening, particularly if you're an artist or a writer or researcher or a journalist. It's a great way to find out. In the US, we have probably, I would say, 40, 50, 60 different queer archives in the United States and lots of different points of view. we're probably sort of the third or fourth largest in the US. And so that makes it good for stopping in one particular place. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been making a lot of changes there. We've begun to digitize our serials, which has been great. And then just yesterday, we announced that we received a major grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation to allow us to digitize our collections over the next few years, which is really very exciting. That will make them available to people around the world. And so that's great too. Let me say hello to my colleague, Emery Grant, who's behind the scenes here. Emery, reveal yourself, unmute yourself now so you say hi.
Hi there, welcome, good to see you.
I was looking, thank you, Emery. Emery's here behind the scenes to make sure everything happens smoothly. I was looking at a tape of one of these shows recently, and I realized if Emery didn't say something, the camera didn't go on him. And so the cameras only go on people when they're speaking. And so it's important for the people to actually say something. Also just at Stonewall, we also do exhibitions there, of course, at the museum. They're primarily drawn from our archives. We have two exhibitions up right now. One is called Life Letters, which are LGBTQ expressions of love. And again, they come from our archives. They're individual letters. Somebody incarcerated in the 1980s writing to his boyfriend from prison here in Florida, or somebody in San Francisco in the 1980s talking about the problems he had with his parents about dealing with AIDS. And also somebody actually who was performing at the Harlem Theater in 1969 in his first drag performance in a Jewel Box review at the Harlem Theater. And what's really beautiful is in 1969, we have him in drag performing in the Jewel Box review at the Harlem Theater. And then we have these telegrams from his mother and his grandparents telling him how much they loved him and how proud they were of him perform. I know, I can see your face there. It's just, they're so heartbreaking. I mean, they're just so endearing, and they're signed, you know, break a leg, love mom, or we love you, love Nimi and Marm, who were his grandparents. And it's so wonderful to see that stuff happening. These exhibitions are available online, of course, and you can see the whole exhibition online. And we also do curator talks as well too. And so we've done talks of those as well. Those will be coming down relatively soon. And then the next two exhibitions will open up in February. One will be called Early Lesbian Publications. We have a wonderful trove of early lesbian publications. And so it'll be looking at a lot of critical periods in the lesbian world in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, how they responded to many things that happened in the United States. And so I think the curator in that show has done a great job. And then also in February, we're going to be opening an exhibition called The Saint. And for those of you who don't know, The Saint opened in the former Roseland Ballroom in Manhattan in the in the Lower East Side in 1979 or 1980. And it was the ultimate disco that everybody wanted to have happen. And so the lights and the music and the sound effects and the smoke and fog and everything else, it was the #1 place. They had many amazing entertainers who performed at the Saint. Bertha Kitt and Grace Jones and Bette Midler, and everybody performed there. But also, not only did people want to go there and dance, and it was primarily for men, but certainly women were there as well too. Unbeknownst to everybody, it was also a big stirring pot for the early days of the AIDS epidemic. And so it only lasted until 1984, 1985. And so we'll explore the role that the Saint had actually on queer culture at that time, and then its demise and things that happened from that. And so again, a lot of that is coming from our archives. We have beautiful posters and ephemera from the Saint, and some of them we've never exhibited before, so I'm very much looking forward to that. So I think that's all the business that I have here to do. And so Um, Nyala is an actor and a writer and a filmmaker of trans experience. She went to Baruch College in New York. Now, what campus of Baruch did you go to?
Oh, so Baruch is in the CUNY system, and it is in Gramercy.
Gramercy, yep. That's where I used to live. I used to live at the corner of 2nd Avenue and 21st Street. So I was, yeah. So
pretty
I was
close to the campus, actually.
Yeah. So I was very close to it, and it's a wonderful school. Native of New York with Southern roots, and so so you said your Southern roots are Virginia, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And tell us, how old were you when you left Virginia?
So I left when I was probably 1 year old, actually.
So you don't have much memory of it then, I guess, right?
Not a super ton of memory, but it's really interesting because I guess I should say like I'm half East Coast and half West Coast because my grandfather joined the Marines and my dad was like an Army brat, and my dad grew up in like Oakland, and my mom's family is from New York. So I guess I'm an American, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot of parts to me.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's definitely something many of us had that experience. Is your dad still with us today?
No, he passed away.
Did pass away. I was going to ask what your dad's feeling was with regard to the current stuff going on in Washington and the insurrection last week. But what do you imagine his response would be?
You know, it's very interesting because I would actually like to reference my grandfather, my dad's father, because he was more so, since my dad, he died when I was very young. He died when I was 1 year old, not even one, which is the reason what caused my mom to move back to New York. But so I would like to reference my granddad, and it's very interesting because my granddad was a very pro-Black person. You know, he went to Black Panther, rallies in Oakland during, that time period. And he was very pro-Black. Like we grew up reading about Shaka Zulu and watching Roots and like knowing a lot about Black history. But he watched Fox News, which is it's very crazy and interesting. So so my dad was in the service, and then my grandfather was in the service. So and then my siblings have served too. So I'm also like a very military family. Like I'm probably the only one of my generation on my father's side who hasn't served yet, and even my siblings' kids are serving. Like one of my nieces just joined the Marines. So I come from a very military family and a very patriotic family. So I think that my grandfather would probably not support the insurrection, even though he would watch Fox News, which is very.
Well, it's really interesting to hear you say this, and of course, so many families have all these mixed stories that go on in them, and of course, we never really know what brings people to these different families. I mean, the good thing, of course, is that we've seen across the board rejection of the insurrection that happened last week at the Capitol. We'll see what the Congress does with that, and with the inauguration of a new president. But so you ended up as a film student, and so tell us, how was it that film really grabbed your life?
Well, so it's kind of interesting because my father's family, very, upward mobility, very like, respectable, very firmly rooted in like Black respectability. So growing up, like in my undergrad, I studied business. So growing up, I was like, it was stressed upon me, like you have to go to college and, like you have to study something that'll, make money. And that's what led me to Baruch College, actually. And I studied business there. And I was actually going to go to law school, but I like to say a bell rung in me where I really loved cinema. And I would have to blame my grandmother, because my grandmother was a huge Turner Classic Movies woman. Like it was always playing. Like growing up, when I would visit my grandmother, I didn't watch like 90s television until I was like a teenager. Like I grew up watching like the Turner Classic Network. So that was like a part of me, and that love for it was there. But as I started to grow up, like, you know, it, especially then, it wasn't like a lot of Black people in that side, you know, or they didn't reach like film director levels. And also, you know, growing up trans too, I didn't see trans people like myself. It wasn't until I joined this acting class, which was for LGBT actors, and I was doing an internship at in a communications department at an office, and it just so happened that my boss loved films too. So we would always talk about films and we would always critique them. And, you know, I would like talk shit. I'd be like, they should have done this or they should have done that. And my boss was like, well, why don't you do it? And I'm like, do what? And she's like, why don't you make a film since, you know, you're talking so much shit? And I was just like, it just like a bulb went off in my head. I was just like, oh, I should do it. So I got into it. I made 2 short films, and then I made a web series with a few of my friends who I met through like the queer filmmaking network in New York City. And so I'm slightly a perfectionist in a lot of regards, where like I never felt that the stuff that I made was good enough. Like I thought it was missing something, you know, and I thought that I was missing something. So I applied to film school at City College in Harlem, and I got in. And I just, well, not recently. It seems like, you know, 2020 is such a weird year. It's like the longest year ever, but then it was really quick at the same time.
Like that, yeah.
It was like that. So I just graduated from City College last May. So yeah, that's how I got into the whole filmmaking thing.
And then also what's interesting is, of course, you know, you have the craft and the artistry of making films, and we're going to watch one here this evening. But also you're very interested in the content that you put in your films as well too. And
Yeah.
So it seems to be very pointed in a very positive way. And so tell us some of the origins about the focus of the content of your films.
I think that's such a great question. I think about this all the time, and it definitely informs a lot of my work as a filmmaker. And it absolutely comes from, you know, being a young queer child. And like I told you, I didn't watch like 90s and 2000s movies until I was like a teenager. So at that point, you know, I started to like have a more tangible understanding of like my transness. So of course, being a teenager in the 2000s, you know, where media was just like in social media, and like we had like such a resource, you know, like we had access to that resource, and I would crave like content about trans people, but it wasn't out there, you know. A lot of it was just like you would see trans people on Law and Order, or it was this show that I used to watch, and it was called, I think it was called Hookers and Johns, and it was on HBO. And a lot of times the women who they would show on there were trans women. So they would do one episode would be like in Hunts Point, or one episode would be in Hawaii, you know? And at that point, you know, I had this like yearning for like trans content, like just to see myself reflected. So I could like, because media helps us like understand who we are, you know, whether it's like books or like poems or movies or TV shows. So I always operate with stuff I make. Would this, you know, be informative? Would this help? Could someone like my younger self relate to this? So that's why I have such a strong of desire to tell trans stories.
Yeah, and that's so great that, you know, that you're doing it. Can you imagine today now what you've learned? And I know that the films and things that you're doing will be great things to point people to. But what are the books or the stories or the people that you would point to your 13-year-old or 15-year-old self to now?
Now, of course, Pose is amazing.
Yeah.
A fantastic woman, which I want to say it's an Argentinian film. I
Mhm.
love that. Um, um, what's the movie called? I think it came out back in the day, but I didn't have access to it. It was a French film called My Life in Pink.
Sure.
That's beautiful. I really love Happy Birthday, Marsha P. Johnson by Raina Goslet, or I can't pronounce her new name, her artistic name, Tourmaline.
Yes.
So that's a really beautiful story. It was a YouTube series that I actually saw back in the day too. Before it was around the time where I started filmmaking, and it was with Jen Richardson, and it was Angelica Ross before Angelica Ross was on Pose. That was amazing. Controversial. This is a very controversial one. Transparent. Even though like the important situation with Jeffrey Tambor and Trace Lysette is very important, the third season of it, where Jeffrey Tambor's character is kind of like exploring the history of like transness in his family, like generational transness, and they're in like Nazi Germany, and his aunt is a trans woman during that period. I think it's like a work of art. I love it. It's so informative. And Disclosure, which I recently watched, which is amazing. I think there's a lot of like anchoring points now. Euphoria, I've heard Euphoria is really, really good too, with Hunter's Schafer on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to watch Euphoria, but I feel very weird watching teen dramas. So I would probably point that to my 13-year-old self. Like there's a wealth of like stuff, but there's still so much opportunity for there to be more creative also.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you say all this stuff, because of course, you know, queer folks have been trying to find role models for a long time. And part of what we do at Stonewall is try to put some positive role models out there. We recently finished this project that people can see. It's if you go to stonewall-museum.org under programs, there's something called LGBTQ history. And so we have 10 different topics there. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to let people see themselves, and also see themselves professionally. Like who are the queer people in film? Who are the queer people in literature? Who are the queer people in sports? Who are the queer people in business? Who are the queer, what are the milestones in politics and other places? So that people can understand that they're not alone in this fight. Because in many ways, it really does become a solitary. Things are, of course, very different today than when I was your age, but that's not enough. It's the fight is going to continue for a long time.
No, I totally agree with you. That's why I love what you guys are doing at the Stonewall Museum, because I am a firm believer, if you don't know your history, you'll repeat it. And for a lot of time, like up until recently, like the lie has been, every generation that you are, that this queerness that's happening, is just happening now, and it's been erased, like even in my family, like I had an uncle who recently passed away, and I didn't know him growing up, I met him when I became an adult. And I think that's interesting because he would have been so monumental to me, like, and I mean, I come from a pretty good family about queerness, they're accepting, like their main problem was like, how are you going to work as a trans person, which was a very rational and reasonable fear, because it wasn't that out there. But if I had known my my gay uncle when I was a teenager, it would have helped me so much,
Yeah.
And I feel like in the Black community, but in all Western communities in some aspects, we erase our queer elders, or society erases our queer elders from us. So I think like what Stonewall is doing is very important, because there's a sense of pride that comes from knowing the history. Even that the third season of Transparent was, I'm not Jewish at all, but just watching that, you know, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know, like this is beautiful.
And of course, as you know, of course, it obviously has been an issue in the white community as well, too, that the erasing of our elders. I mean, I, for one, can say that my mother's brother was a gay man in the 1950s and 60s, and he kind of crashed and burned in his 40s, and he was somebody who I knew and loved. But what happened in the early 70s when he crashed and burned, and I was only like 13 or 15, the idea was you had to shield kids from that knowledge.
Mhm.
It was the shame associated, even though my mother loved him and he was very much part of the family, but there was this desire that you didn't want to in some way contaminate or endanger the children by becoming too close to this information. And I understand now more where that comes from, not in their case, but the fact if you think about putting religion aside for one thing, but think about what happened in the 20th century and think about the fact that, um, you know, McCarthyism and the American Psychiatric Association and how it was really beat into people's heads that if you were queer, that you had some kind of disorder, some kind of psychiatric disorder that was there. And regardless where you were on the queer spectrum, you know, no matter where you were, no matter what the color, no matter what your gender, no matter how you presented yourself, if you weren't a straight up heterosexual man or woman, or then there was obviously something that they had to hide. And your point is a really good one. I mean, you know, I can tell you that, you know, my parents' concern was that I wouldn't get a job, you know, and here I am a professional homo now. So it's like, you know, so things do happen. So.
Yeah, it's, I mean, and with my family too, like becoming an adult and realizing what their fears were, it changed the way our relationship is, you know, because like my father's family, you know, like my grandfather was dirt poor, you know, his dad, like his mom remarried, so he had to live with his dad, and his dad worked on the railroad, so he grew up dirt poor. So like in my father's family, it was more of like, you need to get a job, you need to have an income, you need to buy a home, that's how you survive. So you're trans, you're queer, you know, like they're like, wait, we don't have time for that. Like you need to get a job, you need to go to college. Like we didn't go to college so you could go to college, you know, like we sacrificed so you could do it. So it was like, wait, and you say you're a woman? No, 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 no. That's no, 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 no. You're gonna go to college and that's it. You know,
No,
do it on your own.
Yeah, and again, you bring gender into the whole thing as well too, and you want to volunteer and self-identify as a woman as well too, and realizing the sexism that is rampant in society. It's understandable that they'd be like, no, 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 you don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. Well, what's interesting about all this conversation, of course, is that a lot of this feeds into the films that you make. Of course, this is who you are as an artist and as a filmmaker. And so why don't you set up for our audience the film that you're going to present tonight? And just remind everybody, if you have questions, please feel free to throw them in either the chat or the Q&A things here, and we'll get to them. But let's set it up and then let's roll the film and take a look.
Okay, so I'm gonna show a clip of it, but I will set it up for you. So my film One Last Deal, it's about a Black trans woman with her relationship with her cishet boyfriend. And what really drew me about to wanting to make this film, to write it and direct it and produce it, was because even though we have like a lot of like LGBT content, I just felt like there's not a lot of love stories about trans people, like just pure love stories. Like most of them are kind of are framed with like, you know, did she trick him, you know, or like they didn't know. Which I mean, it's some parts of trans life, but it's also a very sensationalized part, and just dealing with guys who are attracted to trans women, and sometimes a lot of guys who murder trans women, and particularly Black trans women in this country. I wanted to explore, and I wanted to like show something that shows them how to love us, you know, because I feel like a lot of times, you know, like a lot of like trans women, our partners don't know how to love us in a public way because they've never seen it before.
Yep.
And that's the important part of media and literature, is that it gives someone a foundation of what can be. So I wrote this story, and it's kind of borrows from one of my relationships. And so basically the premise is Sarah has just had like a revision surgery, and she has to pee within 12 hours. But her boyfriend, Bill, who sells drugs, he wants to make a really big deal, a really big sale. So he uses his rent money, he uses their rent money to make this big deal. And so we basically chart their romance and this deal over a day, a 12-hour period. So yeah, so I think I can share my screen now, right?
Yep.
And with this film, I did a lot of long takes too, because I really just wanted the audience to just to be in with them while they are in love with each other. And it was interesting because when I was in school, a lot of feedback that I got was, oh, it's so lovey-dovey. And that was my point intentionally, for it to be very lovey-dovey, because we need that kind of representation in media. We need to see trans people in love that isn't, you know, that isn't hidden, and it isn't like, you know, like not shown or isn't shadowy. I want it to show like them just being like, you know, in love with each other in the daily parts of their lives, you know? So I will share my screen now. So can you see now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'll play it. If it lets me. Oh,
I think you want to go back.
You again.
wait, what'd you say?
You want to pull it back to the start? It's starting at 2:27. There you go.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to show a clip of it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine. But I mean, I guess I could show the full movie, right?
Well, it's 12 minutes, and we still have another half an hour if you want to show the film.
Okay, yeah, I'll show it.
Okay.
It's a little laggy though. I wonder, should I share it from online to show it, or?
However you want to, and if you want to just do a script, a clip, that's fine too.
Okay.
Get my butt.
Actually, yeah, I'll show the whole film.
Okay, Sarah, I need you to breathe. And open your legs, please. We're almost there. Okay, now tiny pinch. It's out, you're done. Good job. Now, remember, Sarah, you have to pee before 12 hours. You're not going to feel anything because you're still numb, but you have to pee. It's very important. Okay, sweetie. Have a good day. Congratulations, Sarah. Now you're a woman.
So, what do they say? You have to pee before 9. Hey. Did you pee? No? Listen, you got any cash on you?
Yeah, but our rent's due.
Yeah. Well, I want to pay you back. Plus interest. I promise you. Hey. Just gotta make this deal. Come on. Why not? Just think about it, all right? Just think about it. You again. Get my vibe over here.
What?
Yep.
Say what?
Yeah.
Say what?
Baby, we gotta celebrate. Let's light this bad boy here. Alright. Shit, it's going down. Whoa, 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 whoa. This guy's calling. Let me take this. I'll be right back. Yo.
Can I Snapchat you?
Yeah, sure. All my fans. There you go. What? What?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Here I come. It's happening. Here I come. This. Ladies first. Yeah. A lot. Oh, you di hi. Come here, whoosh. Come here. Gotcha. Inside. Mama. Let's go. Let's go. What? What?
I can't pee.
It's gonna be alright. Sarah. It's gonna be okay. Alright? Come here. Beautiful. It's gonna be okay. Trust me. You're gonna pee in the next couple of hours. Alright? Wanna sing a song maybe?
Okay.
Little dance? Song? Dance?
Song and
Both?
dance.
In Spanish? English?
Spanish.
French?
Spanish.
Alright, because I don't speak French. Que llueva, la vieja está en la cueva. There's no more milk?
That was it.
All good. We'll buy some more.
All of our money's going to your re-up.
Yeah, well, you ain't working either.
I couldn't.
I know. Just saying.
Maybe we shouldn't re-up.
Whoa, really?
We don't have any fucking money.
Fucking God, Sarah.
We don't.
So what? That's why we're doing the deal. But this deal is gonna work, all right? It's gonna work. It's gonna work. Look. Yo. Yeah. Alright. I got you. Hey, Sarah. Get dressed, baby.
Bill,
Yeah.
Bill,
Yeah.
can you look at my pee hole? I think it's closing up.
Oh, shit. Come here. Take a look. Come here. Alright, let me see. Looks pretty good.
Seriously.
Alright, seriously. Looks pretty good. Oh. Look at me. Hey. One kiss. Just one kiss. You want to show me that dress on Pinterest? Whoa, yo, damn.
You like
You
it?
look gorgeous. Yeah, I like it. All right. There. What's up, man? Good? Good. Let's do this. All right. Yo. You gonna do me like that, bro? Babe. Can we talk? Sarah. Sarah. Hey, how's it going? No? All right. One second. It's here. It's over here. Mink. All right. Just give it some time. Just give it some time. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be okay. Just give it a second. Just give it a second. Sarah, just give it a second. It's gonna happen.
Hello? I just got a catheter removed 12 hours ago. No, I haven't peed yet. I know. I'll come in.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I fucked up today. I'm sorry. I'm a fuck up. I love you, baby.
Oh, sorry. Let me stop sharing.
There we go.
Yeah.
Nyala, that was just amazing, amazing. And you know, I watched it this afternoon, and it was really just so much more riveting seeing it this evening and seeing it here with you. I got a million questions, you know, so let me go to the technical side. Although, which film was this for you? Second, third, fourth?
I made a few short films in grad school, but none to this scope. So I
Yeah,
would say that this is actually the first film of this scope, because a lot of my other films were budget, and this was not a huge budget either, but it was more of a technical feat than before what I've done before. So I would say that this would be my first short after knowing a lot more stuff.
got it. I have to say, from a technical standpoint, I was just amazed as to both from an editing and from a shooting standpoint. It was just so tight in so many ways. And I mean, I felt I was watching an incredibly profound and professional story here that I would see anywhere else. So, I mean, from a technical standpoint, given the resources that you had, understanding those, that it was a beautiful thing to watch in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So let's now talk a little bit about the story. And so you wrote the story and you directed this, and So what do you want me as a viewer to walk away with from this particular film?
Um, I I want you to walk away with knowing that, you know, and love is love essentially, which I know at this point it's kind of cliche, but I guess we still need to say that, you know, and just because love looks like it looks, the players in the game of love, I should say, are different than what you're used to. At its most basic level, love is love, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I would want you to walk away with.
Now, Elo, I'm having a little problem with your sound, and I don't know if there's something that we can switch that might, you're just breaking up a little bit there, but maybe that.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, much better. Yeah,
Okay,
much
cool.
better. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. So it's also interesting that you mentioned that somebody called this film lovey-dovey, and clearly there is a relationship between the two characters. Clearly the characters care about each other. They both might have different motivations at the moment as to why they're looking for each other's attention. But I didn't find it to be saccharine in any way. Both of them, it seemed to me, were at very vulnerable points in their day. Needless to say, what was going on with the two of them.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree because like I feel like I didn't want to sensationalize it. So I wanted to like portray the most vulnerable moments, the highs and the lows, like in a very intimate way.
Yeah.
That so people could relate to that, you know, because sometimes when you have a partner, you may be in love with them in the morning, hate them in the evening, and you know, you guys figure it out before you go to bed, you know, like so I wanted to show that too.
Anything autobiographical about this film?
Oh, this one pure autobiographical. It's pure autobiographical, and my producer, my lovely producer Nyala Moon, shout out to her because when I was showing the script, my script professor, when we had to pitch it, he was against this film. Like he was jumping through hoops to be against this film. He was like, why would she give him her money? And
Oh, I feel so bad. I feel so bad for them. They don't understand what human relationships are about.
You don't understand what human relationships. I was just like, and I told him. I remember I was like, well, you never must have been an early 20s in love with someone before. Like when you're in your early 20s, you'll do whatever. You know, like you'll make it work. And
go back to all those movies that you watched on the Turner Classic Movies, and any kind of like Barbara Stanwyck movie or anybody else, where particularly for a woman to get to that point where she's in love with somebody and things are falling apart on both sides, but she's still going to try to help them out.
She's still going to try to help them out, and you know, like love and logic are two different houses a lot of times. So yeah, so he found a lot of like, my professor was really hard on the script of it because he was just like, this is impossible, this doesn't make sense. Like I even got notes where I was told that, you know, I need to like make the character more transish. Like one of the notes was telling me that the character should like observe her Adam's apple and then look at women's clothes and see that they can't fit into the women's clothes. So they really wanted me to fall into that, like that trope, you know, for people to understand that the person is trans. Where I kind of want to push against that. I wanted to be like, okay, you know, they're trans and that's it. Like trans people have more expansive lives than just experiencing dysphoria, you know?
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't know how more real you can get than showing bottom surgery. And and also things like holding up a dress are like cliches to me, it seems. And so I think again, this is just one person's opinion here, but I think staying away from the cliches are really wonderful. I think the one thing that was missing for me, and this is not a criticism in any way, is and maybe it's just because of the shortness of it, I didn't get the depth of the relationship between the two of them. I didn't get why she loved him so much. And also I didn't understand whether or not he was such a complete operator all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
how much did he really love her? Because I walked away thinking the guy was a bit of a skunk and he was just trying to use her. And also I walked away with the idea that she loved him. I didn't necessarily see what it was in him that she loved, but that was the only thing that I wanted to see more. But again, that may have just been a matter of having the time that you had.
I mean, definitely. And also, I mean, this is a story, it talks about something that I experienced in my early 20s too. And it's very interesting with like trans relationships in that aspect, where a lot of times, unfortunately, you know, because of how trans women are placed in our society, a lot of times it's exactly as you say, you know, like Bill, his character is in a sense an operator, because, you know, like for Sarah, you know, like that character, and very much of me in that time, you know, like our worth is very low too, you know. And I mean, I'm not saying that they didn't love each other, but it's those kind of things that are floating in the relationship too, you know, because it's like, I'm trans, will someone accept me? And he accepts me even though he's not like the most ideal partner, and he has a lot of rough edges, but still he loves me. So, you know, I'm gonna stick through this situation. So yeah, that I mean, I never thought of it like that until you said it, you know, but it definitely makes sense about where the character is and where I was at that time too, because my boyfriend of the time, who the character is based off of, was a total operator. You know, like late 20-year-old me will look at him and I'll be like, you know, he was not shit, he was an operator. But then I'll have moments where I'm like, oh, he did love me, you know? But yeah, no, you're right on the money on that part.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I just think as a slice of a human life, or of two humans' lives, because there of course is the pathos about both of them. Both of them are just going through such amazing thing. Your character, of course, is going through more. But I sort of imagine in his world, he having to do the drug deal was about as important to him as he thought your issue was to you. He did seem somewhat sympathetic, but for him it was somewhat a routine problem he was having, as opposed you were dealing with a once in a lifetime issue.
Yeah, no. And when I was just writing more about the characters, you know, his like bio, one thing that really hinged in what I told Julio, the actor who played him, who was amazing, was that, you know, Sarah has the surgery. Now Bill feels like he has to step it up because she's different now.
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of what motivates him to make this bigger deal, you know?
And also, I think there's also an interesting thing about it. As all of us go through life and we're in relationships that begin at a very fixed time, but then obviously as we grow and mature in different ways, no matter what happens to us, we are different people tomorrow than we were today. And so I think what's interesting here is if the story were to evolve, it gets to show how two people can deal with change, which is really kind of a universal story that many people who spend time together, whether you're talking about parents and children or long-term relationships or siblings or friends or those kind of things, because our lives do change dramatically, and there are wildly dramatic things that happen in our lives. And so we really do move along. So, I mean, I found it incredibly powerful that way. Well, believe it or not, we've come to the end of our hour, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface. Next time I talk to you, I want to talk about your experience at the Queer Art Mentorship, because I'm a big fan of that program. And who was your mentor?
My mentor is Rodrigo Buleta.
Great. And wonderful, it's a great program. If people don't know Queer Art Mentorship, I bet if you just Google Queer Art, it's probably called QAM now, QAM.org. And I think it's a great thing to do. And also we put Nyala's website, nyalamoon.com, that's up here in the chat. Let me say goodbye to my colleague here, Emery Grant. Emery, if you show yourself here and say hi.
Thank you, Nyala. That was wonderful.
Yeah,
Good
thank
luck.
you for having me.
And that's great. And folks, we'll see you next week. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but we do have Roxanne Gay coming on in the next couple of weeks about her book about Audre Lorde. If you have somebody who's interested in seeing this talk, this will be on stonewall-museum.org in the next day or two. And also the full thing will be on Facebook for people to see as well. Well, I feel like I've met a new friend, so thank you so much for this. It was a great conversation. If you ever get down further south in Virginia, I hope you come to Florida and come see us here in Fort Lauderdale. It'd be nice to meet you in person.
No, I was in Florida. I was shooting a movie last December or 2 Decembers ago, and I would have totally visited. I was in Miami actually, so yes, when I am there, I will definitely drop down and see you.
Excellent, excellent. Come by and see us. And so good night, everybody. Stay safe. Hope that we might see some change in the government in the next 7 days. And wish for good things out there, and sign up for your vaccine if you're eligible. So anyway, so long, everybody. Thank you.